What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the stream. Today is a little bit different. We are going to have a little rapid fire. Not a lot of fluff in this one. We got a busy man. He's got things to do. We have a big week coming up with Art Basel, and I'm sure a lot of pudgy stuff and abstract stuff. Looking forward to it all. So, without further ado, Luca, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing good. Just got back from a family cruise to celebrate my mom's birthday, so I'm ready to be locked in and start killing it.
Nice.
So,
You've been holding down the abstract trenches. We appreciate you.
yeah, look, someone's got to do it. I'm not gonna lie. I've been dabbling a little bit here and there. Honestly, mostly just kind of stacking up stuff since there's not a ton of volume right now. I've just been picking my winners, letting them sit, letting them cook. But all right, let's chat. What's going on? Okay, if you haven't already, go make sure you retweet the stream on X or go get people in the abstract stream. It's gonna be a good one. So we're gonna cut through the fluff. I want to ask you a big question out the gate. Recently we've seen a resurgence of the ICO meta for chains, right? Mega ETH raised, through a public round through different mechanics, and then Monad raised hundreds of millions through a private round years ago, and then they did a public round through Coinbase's new ICO launchpad. Now, back in August, you had said that the abstract team was working on a massive portal update that would change the entire experience. But you also said alongside that, we'd see a huge fundraise announcement with that. So, what can we expect in regards to the abstract fundraise? Is that still happening alongside the Portal V2 update? Will there be an ICO included in that raise? And then, maybe we could talk about TGE, but I know the answer kind of eludes us.
Yeah, I think our number one priority, I think first step before we get anywhere is Portal V2. Once we get to Portal V2, I think we're going to kind of, I think we did this thing a little bit at Abstract where it's Pudgy Penguins lore, but like we gave a little, it's called Sunium. So it's almost like hopium or like it's like injected in your veins type of like you kind of like drag people along a little too much. I think we got really good at Pudgy Penguins to avoid Sunium to a certain extent. I feel like on the abstract side, we put a cart. We specifically me, I put the cart a little bit before the horse in certain moments. I think right now we're just really focused on shipping chronologically and then like addressing, what it looks like after every big shipment. The first big shipment in front of us is Portal V2, and then everything else is really up to us to kind of just figure out based on the feedback of Portal V2. I think we kind of got into this like a little bit of like a dark silo there for a sec, working on Project Quantum, working on a couple other things that I think people will see the light of day sooner rather than later. Um, but we weren't like really just like leaning into what the community wanted, which is like kind of interesting because the Igloo company is usually really good at that. Um, but it's a different build. Building an ecosystem like Abstract is unique to say the least. A lot of learnings, and I think we're really starting to catch a groove. So to avoid myself shooting myself in the foot and to just align expectations, like first ginormous thing you're going to see from us is Portal V2. That's the number one focus for us. Rebranding it, having it stand on its own so that people really understand the vision of where it's going to go. I think Portal V1, had a really great consumer journey, really great 0 to 1. But I think it's time to take the product to the next level. Building a product like what they're building is not easy.
Mm.
It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of resources, and I know they're giving it their all. So I think for the sake of this conversation, what's right in front of us is Portal V2, and the rest is yet to be seen. Obviously, you've probably seen me on some interviews over the last couple of weeks. The ICO meta is interesting. I'm still pretty convinced that no matter what we do, like I'm always about rewarding, early believers, the biggest supporters. I believe that, people's support and people, championing and participating on the chain in a really big way is them almost like earning to a certain extent. But I also see the value in the ICO meta, and but I do, I can't really speak about like where that puck is ultimately going to fall. But I will say that I think in my non-bias, remove myself from the equation, remove abstract from the equation stance is I like the idea of like a hybrid model. I do think Monad was accurate in that take. You know, I also like ICOs at cheaper FDVs, right? That's just me. Like
Yeah.
I like this idea that people can really go and get like the beauty of the ICO craze in 2017 was, you could smack a 20x, a 10x, a 5x. Right now we're just like we're stoked to get two. And I think that's great, right? But that's just like my non-bias, remove myself from the equation stance. I do like the idea of both. I do like the idea of both, and I think more teams I think you're going to see in the future are going to do both. It makes to me a lot of logical sense in terms of understanding all interests of all parties involved.
Yeah, that makes Monad for me. I kind of agree. I think it was tough at the gate because of the high valuation, but it seemed to following that same pattern that most of these TGs happen, right? Where sell off originally, people grave dance, and then they start regretting grave dancing a little bit. You mentioned something that I thought was interesting, and it's kind of a hot topic whenever I try to talk about abstract to other people. One of the most polarizing things about abstract to most people is that when I speak to them, is that abstract is the pudgy chain, right? They aren't able to see it as a standalone product, like you said, to stand on its own 2 feet. Um, it's a double edged sword, right? When Pudgy and Pengu do really well, Abstract seems to follow suit a little bit with that. But then when Pudgy and Pengu go through a hard period, a cold storm, a blizzard, Abstract follows suit a little bit with that too. And I'm curious in trying to understand your perspective on that, and if you think that's a challenge that needs to be overcome.
It's definitely a challenge, and I definitely see that barometer. I would argue though that when it gets bad, abstract doesn't get as bad. And when it gets good, I think abstract gets as good. So it's like I will say, like, when Pengu's, you know, and maybe there's a little caveat to that, but I will say the barometer leans a little more bullish than it does bearish. But I will say that there's definitely that correlation. I think it's just up to us to, you know, really succeed in the mission that we're set out to succeed, which is like actually, build a chain with huge workloads and, tons of enterprise products and teams, building on top of it. And if it was Pudgy Chain, it would have been named Pudgy Chain. I think like there is a beauty of this Igloo ecosystem though. And like, one thing that I think a lot of people forget is the abstract community is in a good spot relatively. Like we gave $100 million in Pengu to abstract community. I did the math recently, just like refresh my memory, is like 90 something and some change. Right. And that was like most people were only in the community a couple weeks, a couple months, 2 months max. And so there's benefits to that. But I would say that like if we can't break out of that bubble, we're not doing our job. And this thing is not achieving enterprise success, and it's not breaking through and competing with base the way that it should be and it needs to be. And ultimately, I really look at, I would love to be the guy to snap my finger and to be competing with base tomorrow. I really look at things though, like from a time horizon. I've always been very time oriented when it comes to like my competitive nature. And so like I look at base's first year, I look at our first year, I like how we're tracking, right? But it's this next year is going to be a very important year for us, right? We went through our growing pains, we went through our FUD, we went through our ways of building and seeing how that didn't work or how that some parts might have worked. This second year, and just like base was very, it wasn't an impressive first year by any means. But their second year, they started to hit that trajectory, that velocity. And it's going to be up to us and for the community and for the space to hold us accountable. But I do think we're doing this the right way, right? Like there is a world where we could have just done a token and we could have just done it this, I hope at least the people watching are seeing and at least appreciating and respecting the fact that we're actually trying to compete and we're actually trying to build and we're actually trying to do things, in a way that's going to benefit everybody the most. And I believe in this specifically the abstracts team ability to actually get this job done. And I think we have some aces up our sleeve. I think you guys will see those sooner rather than later. Again, sorry for the Sunium, but yeah.
I look. I don't mind the Sunium. I think I think we're a little overdue for it. I, you
I will
spoke
say this
about.
whole ZK narrative is great though for abstract. Just a little alpha for the abstract community, right? Like we took a very unorthodox bet building on the ZK stack. At the time, everyone was building on Optimism and Arbitrum stack, right? And that was like the go-to scaling solution. We knew ZK was the future. Saigar was like, dude, this is for sure the best technology. Everyone's going to go here. It's not if, it's when. We did a very contrarian thing going here. And just for the sake of like future speculation of future value, like I actually do really believe that like things that are going to be built on ZK are going to yield a premium versus things that are not. So I think that, in hindsight, I am glad that we're in a little bit of a position of strength, at least on the technology side. But sorry, I interrupted. I just wanted to
No,
bring.
I look. If you want to interrupt as much as you want, get some alpha, get some hype. I don't mind it. You brought up base, and this is probably the biggest conversation when it comes to abstract in totality. There's so many chains launching these days. We even in we spoke about Monad and we spoke about Mega ETH. When people are looking at the chains and they're looking at what the motivation is, what the incentive is to go and participate on a new chain because it's spread out, it's fragmented so much, money spread across so many ecosystems now. Why, when someone looks at abstract and they're thinking, why do we need another L2? Why would I bridge money here? What do you say to those people?
I think you have to appreciate the opportunity and the upside of the potential build, right? And so like I know everyone's Mega ETH aligned, and I think those guys are great, but like there's nothing to do on Mega ETH. It's not live. Monad was not live. Like these guys are gonna go live when their token is live, right? Mega ETH is a little unorthodox because they're an L2, and I think they technically can be live. And maybe don't quote me to that because I don't follow them as much as I probably should. But the point of the matter is like we're not waiting to be live. Like like there's a difference between, I think, building a chain, right? Like the speculation around base, right, is when base launches is a $30 billion token. And as somebody who really studies tokens and understands all this stuff, that's a good underwriting valuation comparatively, right? If you comp it. And so base, the difference between base and everything else, right? Like why isn't Monad's valuation 30 billion? Why isn't Mega ETH's valuation 30 billion? Is because they worked many years, shipped it, mainnet live, and built it so that when it was a clear number 2 or number 3 or number 4, right, that it had the premium of the top 3 blockchain, right? Because it's impossible to refute. All the metrics support that, right? So these blockchains, 3, 4, 5 billion, like, dude, I believe just with our industry knowledge that we can go and launch abstract at a couple $1 billion. There's no doubt in my mind we could do that with the brands, with the people that are building, with our presence in Korea. Like, I am very confident in doing that tomorrow. But already have a thing that's going to, on that trajectory that's doing that already. Like, let's actually go and try and see if we can go and hit the 20, $30 billion kahuna. And obviously that's super hard, but that's like, I think the difference in the bet that you're making, right? Like the difference in the bet that you're making as a user, if you're focused on the reward side, right? Like let's just speak to the elephant in the room, which is like potential upside and personal, gratification. Obviously, why somebody I think should be, I think our, let's just, before we go into that, I think our consumer journey is better. I think our product is better. I think, the infrastructure that is being built, the products that are on top, I think are up there with some of the top chains. Like, I don't think there's many chains, unfortunately, that are that competitive in their ecosystem, that are that competitive in their product. And if you look at abstracts, like, I think it's up there with some of the top chains in terms of product integrity and ecosystem integrity. I really, you can make your own assessment there. I believe that to my core. You can make that assessment. If not, I'll tell you, I've poked around every blockchain. There really isn't much to do. I can find more to do on abstract than I can, 90% of the blockchains, 95 probably, right? I think there's probably 4 or 5 more blockchains that I can probably do a little bit more on. But so through that retrospect, but as a user who's like, speculating and indexing on potential rewards and upside, like the way that I would underwrite it if I was them is I would just be like, these guys are going for the biggest swing, right? Like they're we can scheme, we could have done pre-deposits, all the metrics could be through the roof. I could have got all the mercenaries involved, and we could just be rushing, to a $2-3 billion TGE, and everyone can dump and then be out, and then the ecosystem die. Like, that is a very easy thing to execute on, especially when you're talking about a group who's executed on a TGE at the highest level. I think nobody would refute that the Pengu TGE was executed at the very highest level that we've ever seen. And we've learned so much since then. So I think abstract TGE, if we were to do it right now, it could be just as good, if not better, right? But the thing is like, we're not going for that playbook. We're actually going and trying to see the 30, 40, $50 billion upside, and saying to ourselves, like, if we're going to do this, we might as well try to fucking go and swing at that. And if it doesn't, and if we can't after, however long, then we have a playbook, and we have our learnings, and we know how to, cook it up. But we're not, that's not the type of builders we are. I really appreciated that about Saigar and the Frame team at the time, that's a part of this. And like, we're actually trying to win, and we're actually trying to compete and swing big. We're not just trying to like launch a $2-3 billion token. Like, that's very easily doable, I think, from our lens and our perspective. But we see, JP Morgan solidified that with the $36 billion underwriting, but like, they're right in that valuation. Like, base is nothing south of 20, nothing. It's impossible, and that's what you got to be striving for, right? If you're building, like, I don't want to go build to be top 60 on the, coin market cap leaderboard. I want to be top 20, like, I think it's possible. I don't know why it isn't, especially when I look at it, and it's hard. Don't get me wrong. And I've learned the hard way. I've been humbled respectfully in this blockchain business that it's actually really hard to build a blockchain. But I'm telling you, man, it's doable. It's achievable, right? I would have already deflected and probably started playing. I'd have a different messaging already by now if I thought it wasn't achievable. I think it's very hard, and I think we underestimated how hard it was. But I don't think we've learned from that and thought to ourselves, yeah, well, we can't do it. It's so hard. It's like, oh yeah, we can do it, but it's going to take a little more elbow grease and a little more pain than we thought it would. But launching a $30 billion thing, if you can launch a $30 billion thing easily without severe pain and frustration and trials and tribulations, then everyone would have done it. And so that's kind of the spot that we're at today.
Yeah. I mean, I'll agree with you. The other day I had a conversation with, and it's hard. People look at me and they just think I'm going to be biased towards abstract. But, I had a conversation with a couple other people, and I was digging around at other chains because I'm like, okay, well, what do some of these other chains have that provides a really good experience like this and has all these different apps or games or, experiences? And I didn't really get a ton of answers. Like, there's some good ones on some chains, but there's nothing that really dominates that. And I think the big part for abstract, what I've seen is mostly that conversation of, well, abstract's only raised 11 million, right? All these chains have so much money and so much funding. It really seems like it comes down to the funding conversation and the treasury conversation. So I'm excited to see that narrative change a little bit when that time comes.
But I think people need to look at that, once people get more clarity on that. Like, I don't think that's FUD. I think that's, holy shit, these guys built a thing comparable to these $5 and $10 billion joints with $1 billion treasuries, and they did it with 11 million. I think that's like a really bullish thing. I think that speaks to like the competency and the eliteness of the people behind this. It's elite, right? And until you guys know otherwise, right? Like, we only are doing this with an $11 million fundraise, and it's fucking impressive because nobody, I will tell you this, I haven't met a team who could do the same thing with 11 million bucks, right? It's like the same Pudgy Penguin story. Like, Pudgy Penguins is awesome, but like, no one would, I would think the story would be way lamer if we knew we made 300 million or 400 million. You'd be like, of course, duh. No, the story's dope because we did this with nothing and raised one $9 million seed round for it. And we basically competed at the highest level against people with hundreds of millions of dollars. And I don't say that to belittle the guys with hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm doing that because I'm saying that to empower my group they should be so proud of what they've been able to accomplish, right? Like everybody who puts their blood, sweat, and tears into this, because the next guys are getting paid double what we're getting paid, right? Triple in some cases, have huge TIP packages and huge bonuses. And we're doing it with significantly less, and we're doing it at a higher caliber. And that's why
Yeah.
people should be bullish, right? Because it's like, dude, we are doing this by extracting the minimum, like we're so conscious of trying not to extract that, like, we, and people will be like, well, raising from VC is not extraction. But on the flip side of it, I raise a big round and then I'm a VC chain and then everyone hates me again. Right. So which one do you want? Do you want a big VC chain with a big valuation? Or do you want to take my word and just look at the execution and be like, dude, if you can do it without raising any money, do it without raising any money, because you look at us versus the next guy. Like, I've always said this, and it's the thing I'm the most proud about. But dollars in versus value created, Igloo Inc. is a top 3 team in crypto. Nobody puts more dollars in the bank from external variables, whether raising from community or venture. We've never raised from community, by the way, and created more value on the outside of it. That's relevant to abstract. There's no chain that's raised $11 million, less than $11 million that's created more value. Zero, right? Yeah. I mean, like you can even see some of the comps today on the meme coins. Like, dude, like, some of our meme coins took a battering, but dude, chains with hundreds of millions of dollars don't have higher meme coins. So
well, I want to ask you about that specifically, right? Because I was doing some digging. I was trying to go back at some other interviews, and I remember you saying specifically that you would be the champion and the leader for meme coins and IP on abstract. We haven't really seen that yet. I kind of want to understand what that looks like for you, right? How do you see yourself becoming the leader of these memes and IPs and NFTs?
So it is a really great question. And I probably, again, put the cart before the horse when I said that. And so I love that you're doing your research and holding me accountable. Well, my first step was I was going to mentor. And I started mentoring these guys. Everyone knows this. I did weekly NFT and weekly meme coin calls. Problem is I didn't see the fucking results that I wanted to see when I was doing those. And those took it, like, I'm really passionate and I gave those my all. And then I'm seeing, like, dude just stare into the screen. And I'm like, like, after 3 months of that, I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah. Right. And then I'm going to get upset. And then I'm one of those guys, man, that if I'm just doing that and you're not doing anything, I'm going to crash out. And that's going to make things way worse. So I was like, before I crash out, I got to stop that. Right. So I was going to lead by mentorship, was like kind of my first step. Then I was also going to lead by like integrations and things like that. But my thing is and I think you will still see this. I think you will still see Pudgy Penguins, the leveraging of Pudgy Penguins, the leveraging of Luca Nets to support those ecosystems. But I need to filter out who's a grifter and who's not. You saw some of this. Too many of these things were supply controlled, too many things, and which, if I were to do some of the things that I wanted to do from a public facing perspective, it would have enriched 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people, right? Maybe 10, maybe 50, but it wouldn't have had the effect that I wanted, which is enriching thousands, right? I'm in the business of enriching thousands. I hope everybody listening believes that. That's indicative of our Pengu airdrop, both to our community and the abstract community, right? I love enriching people because you guys, Igloo Inc. is $1 billion company. So, in retrospect, you guys have also enriched me on paper, right? I haven't gotten rich yet, but I'm banking on it, right? I'm banking on getting rich. And the whole playbook is because I'm enriching everybody else. It's karmic retribution, right? Huge fucking, fundamental thing in life, karmic retribution. You do things for others, it'll come back to you tenfold. And so, like, I want that, but I also don't want to benefit like bundlers and dudes that are hogging all this. So these dips, again, these 90% drawdowns that some of these coins are facing, and I know it's like a root of a lot of the frustration, it's a great thing, right? If you believe, and I'll tell you, there's some big holders of some big bags going around in some of those coins. They're steadfast. They're not folding. They're not sweating because, like, I've been through this before, right? And those things need it. The distribution needs to get better. And that just comes with time. And that just comes with people disbelieving and believing and disbelieving and that rotation cycle. But I'm very much, I also came into this thinking we would have TG'd already, right? Like I would be thinking that this conversation, I came into this a year ago thinking today, this interview on this date would be a TG interview, right? So a lot of things have adjusted and changed. I think I still believe that if you're building memes and NFTs in crypto, that this is one of the, if not the best, probably Solana's, true, I'm not going to be a fool and tell you building memes on Abstract is probably better than Solana, at least not yet.
Yeah.
Right. And then maybe NFTs is better on ETH. But if you're like looking for like the second best, I'd probably put Abstract around there, maybe the third, depending on which one you're referencing. BNB probably has a better meme ecosystem. But the point of the matter is, I think we're competing relatively. Right. And I do think over the course of time, and once these things start to fix themselves, the liquidity, the DeFi implementations that we've been doing to kind of like make sure that this ecosystem runs efficiently, I think me and this ecosystem in its final form, right? Like once it hits its peak and it's like, oh my God, they're hitting escape velocity, is going to be very, very competitive and across both of those facets, and probably the best, right? Because I think I can do for those guys, the guys that are serious at least. But like, man, I got so jaded. I did one call. I won't mention his name. I did one call with a guy, like literally 15, 20 calls, 30 minutes to an hour. And the dude fucking, he's still building it, but I'm not bullish, And it's like, I put so much. And then eventually I'm like, dude, I'm like building other people's businesses for them. And I'm like, that's not what I'm going to do. Right. Like, I'm not going to be an indentured servant to like abstract ecosystem founders who are getting my time, getting my asymmetric information, and then not going and executing on it. But there is a couple guys, mind you. So just so you know, there's a couple guys that I really know have that dog in them, that I am nurturing, that I am still talking to, and then they will get there. But there was the kind of this element in the beginning where like half of my week was independent calls with founders, giving them advice, and then waiting to see them weeks and months later implementing diddly squiddly. Right? Like literally diddly squiddly. I'm looking at that shit. I'm like, dude, what the fuck have you been doing this whole time? You wasted my time, right? Not only that, you're burning my community, which is now your community, on bullshit that like you said you would do, but then you're not doing. So I think it just takes a little, time, as unfortunate as it might sound for some people, is ultimately the best remedy. And if I think for some of the woes that I encountered, at least on that side of the spectrum, I think just it seemed like just kind of necessary that time just needs to bake out the fucking the people, the non-believers on the community side, and then the fucking grifters on the builder side to ultimately give me who I think that final picture is. But there's a couple. I know you have a couple of tokens that you put me onto that are building really great IPs.
Yeah.
There's a couple NFTs that are really doing it.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple guys that I think are really phenomenal, and also a couple guys that really let me down, if I'm being frank.
For sure. And I might have been too early in posting about this, but back in June, we had a similar period where everything, all the coins, all the IP retraced maybe like 90%. Now that period lasted like maybe a month and a half until, Gunnar went like from 2 mil down to like 300K, and everyone's like, okay, yeah, done. And then, like you said, once that period adjusted and showed that it was still here, ran a 10 mil, and I got the shit on Clemente and Easy for laughing at me. So, I think we're in a similar period for sure. It's a little longer, and it's like you said, now we're starting to see builders who show they don't have what it takes. They don't have that dog in them. They can't last that longer period and start to soft rug or hard rug. And it kind of brings me to just a question from your side, someone who has built, like what the strongest IP in crypto at this point. When you're looking at these projects, and whether it's NFTs, whether it's coins, whether it's games, what are the things, what are the aspects that you see? Because I want to make it a point. You brought up, BNB and Solana. I think the interesting part about projects on Abstract, whether it's coins or NFTs, they learned the Pudgy playbook from their beginning, from their launch, to build as an IP, not as a meme, not a viral moment, right? That is what has made Abstract memes or whatever very different to me. And I feel comfortable buying and holding them because, whether it's, Abster or Cyclops or God the Dog or Goon, right? Like they're just focused on building something long-term from the beginning. What are the things, the traits, the aspects you look at projects that, you took heed in with Pudgy Penguins that makes something successful, that makes these IPs, these teams really have it in them?
Yeah, I love that you say that, and I totally agree with you. And I think that is what's going to make this ecosystem, once it hits escape velocity, great. I'll give you a piece of advice to answer your question, but it's respective on anything that you do, I think, in regards to making bets financially, whether it's a publicly traded company, whether it's a crypto token that's live today, whether it's an NFT project, whether it's a venture investment. The common denominator, and I've deployed millions of dollars everywhere, and I've lost millions of dollars everywhere. The common denominator for all my successes starts and stops with the founder. You either know they got it or they don't. And it's very easy to tell after a couple of weeks or months being in their community and in that, building that rapport. If you go the extra mile, which I hope everybody who's trying to get rich and isn't rich yet is going the extra mile underwriting their investments. And if you don't, then if you lose money, it's your fault and take accountability. But if you're investing in something and you're underwriting it, it starts and stops. I mean, dude, I've invested in shitty ideas where the founder was a killer. I literally made my best venture investment ever exited 5 months ago. And I told Peter this, who's Chef Goyardi. I told him, I was like, dude, this business should have failed. This idea kind of sucked. And I literally turned 20 G's into like $6 million.
Wow.
And it was a venture investment. And it should have never won. It should have never, ever won. But the guy was a dog. And all the ones I made money from comes down from the guy or the team. Really starts from the top down. It has to be a dog, dude. Something has to drive them. It has to be ego or competitive nature or financial, wanting to be rich, whatever, changing their families' lives, whatever that drive is. But you can tell. Right. And so that's why I think a lot of people, one of my frustrations early on with NFTs was everyone was playing the pretty picture game. And I was like, you guys are so obsessed with your pretty pictures. You guys are not looking behind the scenes and seeing who's a dog. And that early on, that was like my sell to a lot of the whales. I was like, dude, you love your community. I get that. And you love the pretty picture. You have an affinity to that picture. But I'm so much more of a dog than that guy. Right. And, time has told that, like, this is like first year at Pudgy when I was really just trying to, sell the thing, time has showed that like that was the common denominator. And so that's what I encourage everybody to look at. Like if something is failing, I promise you, just look no further than the CEO, right? There's nobody else to hate. I just swear there's nobody else.
Yeah.
I can tell you all the bullshit on Abstract and I can tell you all the great shit on Abstract. And I can tell you it all starts and stops with the main guy. Right. And it's his fault. Nobody else's,
Yeah. And I think like for me, what I've looked at is the ability to, and I know the joke with Frank D. Gods is, we tried something, whatever. But when I look at some of the top projects or the top founders, whether in Web 2 or Web 3, it seems like it's also the ability to, I don't want to say pivot, but it's people who are willing to see what works or what doesn't, cut the head off of something and pick the part that they really succeed at. But they never give up when they're hitting a wall and nothing's working, right? Like they're finding the strong suit or they're willing to change it a bit.
I'll give you a clip, man. But what they did to Frank D. Gods is one of the great travesties in crypto. I swear. And I know everything. I know I was so behind the scenes. All of the claim, like I literally knew everything. I can tell you guys this genuinely. I wouldn't even bring it up if I felt otherwise because I wouldn't throw him under the rug. Right. Just because like there's no need to beat him down if I thought he was wrong. I know all the context. That man was done so bad. And he was one of the great founders, I promise. And I think people just don't understand the variables of what it is to build a business, having partners, having co-founders, expectations, things ripping to the moon and having to meet it, personal constraints. But I pray he comes back and builds in the space again, because I promise you, he was one of the greats. And no matter what anybody says, I hope that anyone who respects me believes me when I say this. I've underwritten that whole situation and heard from every person at the table, even to the bullshit claims that he was caballing. Dude, I remember being in this house one day, and I remember the timeline being like, Frank D. Gods is back at it again, scamming everyone, inside. And he's literally on the couch, like, I lost so much money. How did I lose so much money? What are we going to do to save the money? Are we going to take over the Twitter? I'm like, that's not the guy who's scamming. Yeah. He's buying like the rest of you, and he's buying more, and he's down bad, and he's trying to like save his bag, It was just really, and it was great because I saw that behind the scenes duality, because I was like, the timeline was literally like Frank Cabal back at again, trying to pump and scam this token. And I see him on the couch, not even reading those tweets because at the time he was just off to X. And I'm literally like seeing him being like, bro, we're gonna lose so much money on this. Like, how do I save this? We gotta get the login to the X and we gotta log in and we gotta run the page and we gotta market this shit. And he was down $1 million, you know, and you know, I think he ended up losing like 400 or 500 G's, but that's not the look of a guy who's like insider pumping and dumping. He just did that kid wrong, man. It really did.
Yeah. I mean, he's been having a crazy run on FOMO, like the app, and people can see live, and it's not even like low market cap stuff; it's high market cap stuff. So
you gotta get
whether
cracked on FOMO. I'm working on it. Come on, Paul. Come on, say.
I brought me and some friends have been trying to get them to add it. We're waiting. Yeah,
it's sooner rather than later. I don't think you're gonna wait months for that.
Okay, hey, Alpha. I mean, also shout out to Loot as well. Loot's a great trading platform. I'm begging them to make a mobile app though.
Yeah, but Loot is epic. I'm like a big fan of Loot. I think Hunter's a killer. Hunter, exactly. Yeah. I'd take a bet on Hunter because Hunter's a killer.
Yeah, I mean, he's been here for literally since I got to crypto in the very beginning. So he's one of the guys who hasn't left, and they'll keep trying stuff no matter what. I wanted to talk about something. I won't go too much into depth about it, but I would say it's kind of a common consensus over the last half a year that your public exposure, your public presence with Abstract was pretty not active compared to like the very, very early days, right? But within the last 30 days, it feels like everything has shifted, right? Abstract's output, whether it's updates to the portal, whether it's partnerships, whether it's like new additions, your voice, your persona has become so much stronger in regards to Abstract. It seems like a tide has shifted. And I kind of want to understand, what really triggered that. And the last 30 days have been great, but what does that next 30, 60, 90 days look like for Abstract?
Yeah, I think just one of the problems with that like little lull period was I really did the Abstract team a disservice. Now, naturally, I don't do all of the work that goes on right at Pudgy. I'm like really just the forward-facing guy that like regurgitates information to the front to the best of my ability to champion people, rile people up, communicate that message, address FUD if there's any, right? Like I'm really just the liaison between community and world and company and product. My problem with Abstract is like I'm not a super savvy technical guy. I mean, I understand a lot, but I'm not a builder, and I don't understand it well enough to know how much time things take. And so what I started to do is I started to pigeonhole the Abstract team, specifically the engineering team, into like expectations and deadlines that the community was holding them accountable for. And I was actually creating more problems than I was solutions, right? And so on one side of the spectrum, like Abstract August was supposed to be a big thing. I could tell you all the things that were supposed to happen in Abstract August. Abstract August not shake out the way it was supposed to, but it was because of other constraints that we couldn't control, right? Like we're not going to go and put people at risk and the platform at risk and do things that are going to compromise and create a real disaster, right? Like and naturally, like I was doing more harm than good. And so my solution was Pengu was pumping at the time. Focus on Pengu. Let's hit this thing home, right? I thought, frankly, I thought quarter four was going to be an epic run up, like just finger to the wind. It felt like the market was going to send. It felt like it was going to pop soon, right? But I didn't think it was going to pop. I was thinking like it was do the same thing as last year, like it was going to blow up in January. I was kind of ready for that. I didn't think it was going to blow up sooner than that. So I got a little upset because I was like, oh, I'm ready for this big run up. Saigar and team are cooking, they're engineering. We just should take Pengu to the moon. I knew that Pengu going to the moon would help Abstract, right? Because I'd seen that already, right? So I was like, okay, the best thing I can do for Abstract right now is shut the fuck up and just, send Pengu to the moon. And like, that's going to help a lot. That's going to help, that's the best that I could do at that time. And so I just wanted to communicate to the community. Obviously, I communicated this to you in private. Like, that's kind of why I took that lull period. I think as of recently, those guys just been on a clinic. And it's back to clinic mode. I mean, in the early, first couple of months, I mean, there's this narrative that like we were completely like in the dark for like 8 months. Like, let's just be real. Like there was 3 months where you guys didn't get the same cadence that we were usually on, 3-4 months, but like first couple of months, these, now these next couple, like we've been on a hot streak. And I think we're just now back into that early groove. What we're going to see again, I'm not going to shoot ourselves in the foot to this point. Like I'm not going to create more problems and solutions, but I think you're going to see us get back to Igloo Inc. quality cadence, which is just ship, deliver, moments, announcements, just back to our regular programming. And I got one more for you, Ellie, because I do have to.
Wait, okay, wait, whoa. Chat, no, okay. Running joke. It's Eli.
Is it?
Okay. Yeah,
sorry, I'm sorry, dude.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It happens literally every single time.
I'm dyslexic and I always get words. So if I do that again, I probably knew it was. I probably knew it was the difference, but just so you know, like that's one of my big like mental disconnects. I have really bad problems with names. So if I do that again, I apologize.
It's okay. It's 10 out of 10 at this point.